Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah, we do.
Yes. Great. Welcome everyone to our Women in Localization Ireland event today. The title of the event is The Role of Translation Management Systems in Achieving Seamless Localization. I'm Julia Cassidy and I'm the current chapter manager for the Women in Localization Ireland chapter. In my day job, I am the head of localization at Momentive, the makers of SurveyMonkey and Get Feedback. So we're delighted to see you all here today, taking time out from your busy day to join us. First of all, a quick overview of our agenda today. First, I will tell you a little bit more about women in localization and what we are about. Then we will hear a presentation from our speaker, Anna Jochimovic. We'll take a minute to take a group photo, and it would be great if you could all turn on your cameras at that stage, but I will let you know when that happens. After that, we will have a panel discussion covering the different perspectives of what we all want and need from a translation management system. Please post any questions you have for the panel into the chat. At the end, we will have an opportunity to meet each other and continue the conversation during our networking session. Okay, so first, some more information about women in localization. So Women in Localization's mission is to foster a global community for the advancement of women and the localization industry. We are inclusive and everybody with an interest in the localization industry is very welcome to join us. Membership is totally free. Our values are be innovative. We are a forum for sharing best practices and the latest industry trends. Find your community. This event and all our other events are always opportunities to connect with other localization professionals. And our third value is inspire equality. So we give women in the localization industry a platform to lead and share their knowledge. Since Women in Localization was founded in 2008, we have grown to 28 chapters around the world. We have around 5,000 members and we're still growing quickly. Women in Localization is a non-profit organization and we wouldn't be where we are without all our sponsors, and we're very grateful for their continued support. So thanks to all of you if any of you are here today. If you're not already a member, please take this opportunity and sign up. It's completely free, as I said. The sign up link should also go into the chat. You might find it there, or you can use the QR code here. So as a member, you will have access to our jobs and internship boards, as well as lots of great content and event videos. This one will also go up on the website in a little while. So as a Women in Localization Ireland member, you will also get early bird access to all our events before they're made available to the public. So absolutely lots of reasons to join, and yeah, everybody's welcome. So for all our existing members, I just wanted to make you aware of a recent change in the system. You can now receive notifications also for an additional chapter that you're interested in. So to make that change, you can just log into your account on the Women in Localization member area on the website, or you can just click on the Update Your Preferences link at the bottom of any of the emails you got from us. And if you're like me and you signed up ages ago and you don't actually remember getting a password, just use the forgot password link on the website and you will get one sent to your email address that you signed up with. So let me quickly introduce you to the volunteers that we have in our Women in Localization Ireland chapter. So we have myself and Katrin Drescher, Globalization Director at Tenable. She's our sponsorship manager, and previously she was our chapter manager. We have Esther Curiel, a Localization Operations Manager at Indeed. She's working as the Mentorship and Education Manager. Laure Joannick, Localization Manager at Squarespace. She's our Membership Manager. And Laura Lorusso, Localization Manager at Active Campaign, and Ketty Tirito, Senior Localization Quality Engineer at Zendesk. They are both looking after our social media and marketing. And we have Tabea Deville, a Localization Researcher and Lecturer at the University of Limerick, and she's recently taken on the role as Event Manager. Thanks to all you guys for your contributions to the chapter and for helping arranging this event as well. So here you can see some of our previous events. We had an amazing session on digital marketing localization with Laina Solomon at ServiceNow. At Autodesk, we had a session of speed roundtables on continuous localization and internationalization. We were at Tenable's beautiful office overlooking the River Liffey for an inspirational mentoring and coaching panel conversation. Microsoft invited us into their offices to give us an overview over their extensive neural machine translation research. And then when we were forced to go virtual, we made the best of the situation and organized a digital marketing tea talk together with Amplexer, Indeed, and Specsavers. Last November, we teamed up with Google, who incidentally employ around 8,000 people here in Dublin. And they shared with us insights on how to make informed localization decisions. So being virtual also allowed us to hold a joint event with our friends in the UK chapter back in April on the topic of localization engineering. So if you have any topics you're interested in or have any ideas for collaborating with us for future events, just please get in touch. We would love to hear any ideas and suggestions. So you can reach us via email or on LinkedIn, and please follow our LinkedIn page if you haven't already. We're also looking for volunteers to join our chapter leadership team at the moment. So if you're interested in getting involved, just click on the form. I think it's going to be posted in the chat, and tell us a little bit more about yourself. We're closing the form very soon, so please make sure and get your application in if you're interested in joining. Okay, so now let me introduce you to Anna Jefimovic, head of localization at Paxful. She has 10 years of experience on the client side and various localization teams. And Anna will talk to us about what makes a translation management system great for the various use cases that there might be. So Anna, over to you.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks for having me today. Thanks for trusting my, experience about what localization tools might be good at or not so good at. So thank you for participating, dear guests. And yeah, so about translation management systems. This little slide deck will cover various aspects of what to look at when you're picking your next TMS or just your first one, or maybe you're about to just start your career in localization. So you might want to know like what's good, what's not so good. And all right, let me see if I still can control the screen. Looks like I do. Yeah, great. Wonderful. So look, if you look at TMS, it's a kind of ecosystem, right? So people of various roles as like specializations work there. Translators, translation project managers, owners of budgets, and so on and so forth. So forth, like a smaller fish, a bigger fish, like a really big fish. And everybody is looking for something specific there, right? So what seamless localization is about, I strongly believe in it, that it's about human connection. It's about people coexisting in the same in the same aquarium, okay? And being able to get things done fast and in, in human-friendly way, let's put it this way. Yeah, so let's take a look together at what it might be like. Just a few words about myself. As Julia mentioned, I have 10 years in localization on client side. Currently, I work in Tallinn, Estonia. Amazing place to be in summer. If anyone is around, we're open. Our COVID restrictions are very mild right now, so take a chance and just come over. Let's maybe connect on LinkedIn. If you're interested, please let me know if you want to, become friends there. And now I work in Paxful. That's a peer-to-peer crypto marketplace. And right now we have like around 40 languages on the web service and mobile application. And this year was a very, very important year for us because we have almost tripled our count of supported languages. And when we were just planning this expansion plan, right, we were thinking, okay, so does our current CMS actually capable of, this kind of scaling? Can we do it with our current solution that we use? Is it good? Is it not? Why? And that's when I started looking elsewhere. So we basically started analyzing the market, what's on the market, what's available. and compared a bunch of different solutions. And that's basically how this checklist was created, because not my team, my friends, I would say, so my colleagues, we did invest a lot into looking into really different aspects of what TMSs can be like. So again, if we look at typical TMS users, who they are: translators, project managers, or something like budget owners, heads of departments, program managers, like people who own resources like budget people and so on, and can allocate them to different projects. And this is exactly from which perspectives I'm going to be talking in upcoming 10 or 15 minutes, yeah, depending on how it goes. Please don't hesitate to ask me anything in the chat. If Julia lets me answer them after the presentation, would be really awesome. If not, I'll just text you back after I'm done. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, translator. Okay, a really beautiful little fish, the cornerstone of our business. So as a translator, you want this new TMS, your first one or your next one, to be easy to use, right? So if you have a team of, for example, I don't know, 10, 12, 50, 100, whatever translators, and you're changing it, you really don't want to spend much time on onboarding. You really want this tool to be easy to use, really intuitive user interface and user experience. Plus, you absolutely want it to have comprehensive FAQ, so people just don't ask your project managers about like, oh, how do I do this? How do I do that? It really has to be really simple. Plus, I truly think it's really important that just a translator, not necessarily project manager, might just contact customer support of the TMS and get the answer quickly, really quickly. What else? Of course, we need to have a very stable fast working ways of providing context to translators. So any communication channels inbuilt in this solution is just absolutely mandatory. The perfect case is when, for example, translator is asking you a question and you get an instant notification about it in your Slack, for example. So the faster communication, the faster information flow is, the more seamless the whole process is. So plus, there should be a way to upload screenshots, of course, or ideally provide even possibility of in-context translation, or to give some previews to your translators. It means that the tool must support multiple file formats, and the tool must be capable of representing them in a visually, again, human-friendly way. Not all of them can do it, unfortunately. But yeah, in context translation, of course. And yeah, that's one more thing. Like as a linguist, you might probably speak not just 1-2 languages, but more. And in case of doubt, you really might want to take a look at others, how they translated a certain string, and it will help you somehow to figure out what to do in your case. So checking other languages, I really think it's a good asset for TMS. Next one, but that's not the end of the story. But how do I get to the next slide? Oh, wonderful, wonderful, it's working. Julia, don't save me yet. It's okay, it's working. So not every TMS, but most of the solutions that we check, they did have a very nice task management systems embedded, like to-do lists, dashboards for translators to know what to do first, what to do next, what to do, with the lowest priority. Plus, it's really helpful if translator can actually see how much money they might make from completing a specific task. If your translators are not on the payroll, but they get paid, like how much words they translated, that much money they get. Also, it's not a very obvious thing, but we have had so much trouble with it with our current solution. Like if you're a translator, you click on a task, it does take you to the list of strings that are included in that task, but you cannot see the overall file where these strings belong to. So make sure that this kind of corner case is also covered when you're picking your next TMS, because it's painful, really painful to try to identify the file from just bunch of strings. So if you cannot see the whole file, you cannot get the context, you cannot see the preview, and so on and so forth. It's just painful. One more thing, I touched it a little bit just before. So how much am I making? Translators really need to understand how the calculation of statistics is done, translated words, approved words, like proofreading, per hour tasks. It's really super helpful to have it, all this information in one place, easily accessible by translators. So there must be a clear user interface to see it, a clear algorithm to calculate the count of strings or words or anything. Plus per hour tasks. Yeah, we don't do it. I mean, we don't track per hour tasks in our current TMS tool. It has its own really huge advantages. That's why we still use it. But this is something I personally lack. Yeah. Plus, it would be super great if your TMS could just generate an invoice just based on statistics. So your translators don't have to, compose their invoices all over again using the exported files, or even worse, copy pasting of their statistics from the TMS. So yeah, that would be really awesome to have. Some instruments do have it, some don't. Let's go next. And the next one is, translation memories. They must be easy to upload, download, edit, share, clean up, right? Plus machine translation. Sometimes you might want to let your translators use machine translations. In some scenarios, it makes sense. Sometimes it does not. Of course, the glossaries, which are easily accessible, and glossaries that support contextual information as much as possible, including screenshots for term and so on and so forth. Plus, it's really nice to have multiple versions of translation for the same term, sometimes depending on the context. And, if you can use just a glossary, you can export it. It means that you can, for example, outsource some tasks to external agencies that don't have access to your TMS. So that's really super helpful. Plus, of course, offline translation. I know for sure that the translation management systems, online ones, they hate it when translators do their job offline, because their whole business is built around online translation. And that's why they not always correctly support export and import formats. So you might have problems with it. So please double check always how this thing works. Can you export and import XLeafs or any other kind of files for translation from and into your translation memory, translation management system? Plus, well, if sometimes, or maybe even always, just correct me if I'm wrong, but when you export content for translation offline, you lose the context. So you cannot export like screenshots or comments from your colleagues and answers from project managers to those questions. If you guys find any TMS that does it, just let me know, and I'll be very much willing to take a look at it, because I haven't found any. One more thing about translators. Most of them are reasonable people. They don't want to break something, right? Especially when dealing with technical texts full of, thank you. Yeah, full of tags or code or whatsoever. So your tool must be really careful with potential technical issues. Okay, so there must be some validating mechanisms, just preventing your translators from, for example, saving translations when they contain some broken symbols or broken anything, placeholders or whatever tags. What else? Plus, yeah, it's really very like sensitive topic, because sometimes you want to validate for specific issues, sometimes you don't, so it really must be customizable. All right, so what else we can find here? Yeah, oh yeah, so I've seen it so many times. So if you can see translations in different languages, which is that's a good benefit. Sometimes you might occasionally save your translation under a wrong language. Happened to us a few times, a really painful thing. Please make sure your TMS does not let you do it. Otherwise, it's a mess to find all the strings saved under wrong language. Yeah. What else? Plus notifications, of course, notifications are very important. It's really cool if you can define as a translator yourself how you want to receive these notifications. If you're an active Slack user or Teams user or Skype user, for God's sake, or Telegram user or email user, like what's the best way for you to receive notifications, how fast you want to receive them. Sometimes it's really, not sometimes, it's always about time. It has to be done quick. So translators really need to be notified about new jobs like really fast. Like in our case, how we work now, like every translation job that we create, of course, it triggers an email that is sent to a translator. But anyways, we do have to notify translators additionally in Slack, because we just know that all of them are in Slack, and we just text them, hey, we have like a new translation job. That's how you can be sure that translator will actually get to know that there is something to do, not in the end of the day when you needed the job to be finished, but in the beginning of it. Yeah, so notifications are really important things. So I personally would love to see just more notifications for translators, so my team doesn't have to notify every translator about every new translation job manually. But that's like lyrics. Let's move on. Meanwhile, what's the time? Julia, are we good on time? I guess we are. It's just 10 minutes, right? Okay, I guess so, more or less. Okay, project managers. About project managers. So first of all, you need to control your spaceship, right? You want to know what's the status of your project, where you're behind with translation or with quality control, where do you have some milestones that you're about to miss, or maybe you're just way ahead of the plan. How many words have you done in your projects, like a day, a week, a month, a year? How much budget you spent on your translations? As a project manager, you definitely need to know like how much is the fish, right? You want to fine tune your workflow for your projects, and workflows are really something that most of TMS systems are really passionate about. They do let you configure workflows in a very nice way, just by drag and drop different elements of the process. That's super nice. Plus, you want to control if machine translation is enabled or disabled for your project, or for some of them, right? Imagine you're running 20 projects. Of course, you would just want to know about all of them at a glance. So having a good dashboard, like a health monitor, would be super beneficial. Plus, of course, you want to know, you want to have easy access to comments from translators, specifically to unanswered questions that you have to take care of, or strings that failed somehow the validation, like broken symbols, etc. And so you really have everything on your table, basically on your dashboard. That's something really nice. Different TMS systems, they provide different kind of dashboard. So be really careful about what you see on the dashboard when you're picking your next solution. What you need to see, what you don't need to see. What else? Okay, files. It's 2021, and I know that most of you, including us here, still have to manually upload and download files for translation. It just happens because not all the translation systems have APIs that can be connected with whichever services your company use for, I don't know, sending emails or CMS platforms whatsoever. So whichever TMS you go for, just be sure that files uploading and downloading is as simple as possible. So be sure that you can define a file structure for your project, because if you don't, it might cause like a really big headache, especially for large scale projects that you need to have like a good structure at. Sometimes it's really helpful to create just a simple translation file, like a source file in TMS itself. Super helpful, very easy. Like in our current solution, we use it quite often. Hiding strings in files, hiding files, assigning specific languages for a file, that must be also taken care of, because if you don't have it, like you just might really be disappointed at some, step of your journey. What else? Just like translators, project managers want to have a very clear overview of tasks, how they're doing. Are they behind? Is every translator assigned to this specific project, are they doing well? Are they on schedule? Are they behind? Maybe they're just, on vacation, or someone went all of a sudden to maternity leave and forgot to tell you. Things happen. All of us are humans here. So yeah, just task management dashboard would be super easy to have as well. Yeah, and another interesting thing is integration with your company task management system, like Jira, Trello, I know, Monday, whatsoever, or Rike. Sometimes it's really cool to manage everything just from your Jira and have your TMS integrated with it in a way that you don't have to do that much paperwork, like creating tasks for your translators. They might be actually generated automatically if you have a really strong integration and really strong engineers to set it up for you. So just be sure that your TMS has a lot of, integration opportunities in this way as well. What else I wanted to share? Yeah, QA checks, but not from translator's perspective, but from project manager perspective. So as a project manager, I really want to define what's important, what's not. Sometimes terminology is important. Sometimes you can be quite fluent, just use it or not. You might be strict about translating placeholders or not. You might be strict about translating any specific like fragments of the source string, or you might be not. So being able to fine tune your QA checks is a very important thing to have. And of course, just like translator or anybody else involved in a project, you want to get notified about important things, about how your project is doing, how much you spend, how active your resources are, or maybe they're not. If you have new strings to translate, or you have some new requests for translation, or you have some new files uploaded for translation in your project. So having fine-tuned notifications is super helpful. And I personally believe the more detailed you can configure your notification, settings, then the better. Plus, being able to have some monthly or weekly reports about progress of your project is also something really nice to have. I haven't seen many of those yet, unfortunately. And I believe that's it for project manager. Let's see if we have, now we're getting to budget owners. Wonderful. Program manager, head of department, anyone who's in charge of resources. And that's something that is quite correlating with what Paxful has been going through over this year. So first of all, scaling. You have to be able to scale the team, right? And monitor the team performance. Ideally, you can even find and hire translators through your TMS. Quite a few of them actually provide marketplaces for translators, and you can just try to find yourself good translator there. time-saving thing. Plus, you really want to onboard your new linguists or new project managers fast and easy. Plus, you want to know availability of your resources. Like I personally would love to have like a calendar embedded in my TMS, so I can see who's on vacation, who's not, who's planning, I don't know, sick leaves or whatsoever, and who's available or not during Christmas time, so I can get some work done during the hot time. Plus, I really want to know who's performing in my team or not. I'm talking about linguists now, translators, proofreaders, how many mistakes they do, how fast they translate, and so on and so forth. Plus, I'd like to know what's our financial situation like. I want to be able to plan budget for project, you know, per language, per content, and be able to track how much basically we are within the budget or not. And I really want to be able to control it somewhere like live, not just in the end of the month by exporting some XML files with some numbers and trying to put them all together. So this analytics, financial analytics, is a really super helpful thing to have. So if you really will need to control and monitor every dollar that you spend on translation, make sure that your TMS system is your friend, not your enemy in this way. Yeah. What else? Just one more thing, right? But I'm going to be talking about localization of product mostly, not marketing, but product. So sometimes being able to align your localization efforts and development efforts, especially if you are on continuous localization cycle, that's really super awesome thing. If you can configure it in your TMS system, that would be awesome. Very awesome. Yeah, what else? Oh yeah, the saddest part, the reasonably priced tools. Just the funniest thing is that it's about scaling, right? So as far as I understand, the majority of products now on the market, TMS systems, they limit either your hosted strings, which means the source strings plus all the translated strings in all the languages, or they limit seats, count of users that have access to your projects, or both. And all of a sudden, if you're going for an extra 3 languages, you have to pay like twice as more for your subscriptions just because you're getting over your limits. And that's really sad. So if you guys looking at this, be careful about your capacity that you can afford within your subscription. Yes, what else? So maybe your business, your domain is so strict, like banking, I don't know, or something else, really delicate kind of businesses that require all the tools that have been used within development or localization. They have ISO certificates, they can be hosted on premises and cannot be hosted in cloud. That's something else to take a look at, because compliance is always a compliance. Some TMSs can be run on premises, some not. Yeah, CLA level might be critical, might be not for you. Plus, it's really interesting that, as far as I understand, most of current TMS systems, when you ask them about like prices or some specific packages, they can combine you like a Lego house, like different pieces of functionality, right? Like modules. So you can pay only for what you need, not for everything that's included in your subscription. So be careful. There are different pricing models, and be just careful about what to pick for your needs. And the most painful thing is migration, okay? Because if you're using something and you have a lot of translated content already, you have all the integrations in place, all the automation flows, for example, connected to your code repositories or your external systems that you use for, I don't know, CRM systems or Zendesk or anything. Imagine you have to migrate it to a new system. Who will do it? Do you have developers or not? Does your new TMS provide this migration service or not, because quite many of them do, especially if you pay for the super, premium subscription. There will be some technical account manager who will be doing the actual migration for you, or managing engineers doing it for you. But yeah, be careful about your migration plan. Think about migrating your translation memories, your glossaries, your user roles, your project settings, your everything, plus integrations with all the external systems that your company use. And I believe we are reaching to the end. Are we? Yes, we are. Yes, very much we are. And now questions and answers. Let me open up the chat. If you have any questions, stand up, please post them here to the chat. If there is any translator who's actually using one of these tools, which one? I'm just curious. Well, as a translator, you probably work for a localization agency, or you have like some other clients, like maybe for some product development company. Mostly they will be using some solution for, if they're more or less mature, if they don't translate in Excel, they will be using some online translation management system, of course, and you will most likely work in it, or you will be receiving files, for example, to translate offline, which is unlikely to happen. But yeah, like typically you will be translating online for your clients. Yeah, I hope that's the answer to your question. The next question, Ines is asking, does your TMS also store the content, or is it just translation management? Is content itself stored outside of TMS and is an external database? It depends on the kind of content. Everything that we translated remains in translation memories, okay? So in this way, yes, it is a database of content, but it depends on the tools. Like if we're talking about product, of course, like in our product release cycle, so to say, yes, the content is grabbed from our translation management system. It is exported to version control system that then it is included in the build, and then it gets deployed to servers. But the very same thing happens with, for example, Zendesk documentation. All the content is actually stored there, and it's available for editing or publishing or whatsoever. But yes, we do keep the content in TMS as in translation memories. So to say, I hope that's enough for an answer. Yeah, thank you for the question. Anything else? Maybe. Apparently not. Julia, please save me. I'm feeling lost. Yes, and I need a bathroom break. Yes.
Yes, so before you go for your bathroom break, stay on for the phone, please.
Okay.
What we're gonna do next is a group photo. So if everybody could turn on their video, that would be great. And I will try and get a full view. Just give me a second while I get set up. Okay, I am. Everybody smile. Okay. Thank you. I think that worked. And I will also stop sharing. Okay, thank you so much, Anna, for your insights and for sharing this great checklist of all the things we need to think about when we want to pick a new system. What I really liked about it was that it looked at the different perspectives, because often we forget about the translator perspective, as localization managers and within companies picking systems. So it's really good to have that angle as well, because they're the people who use the system day in, day out. So really thanks for that. Yeah, so now let me introduce you to Martina Russo, founder of Moving Words Translation and the Action Sports Translator, another translator using the system. Martina will bring valuable insights from the translator perspective into the conversation, and she will moderate our panel conversation. So Martina will introduce the rest of the panelists then. Thanks, Martina.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Anna, that was a really good presentation, and I especially loved the different perspectives as well that you brought in, and it will be so sorry. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself before I introduce the different panelists. So as Juliet just said, I am the owner of, so I am a translator myself, but I also own a couple of translation brands, and one is Localization for SaaS companies, and one is Localization for outdoors and action sports companies. So I bring both the perspective of the translator and the boutique LSP owner, I guess. And we have three amazing panelists. One is Ana Duarte from Amazon, Joanna Russell from Venga Global, an LSP, and Istvan Lengil from Be Lazy and Nimdze Insights. So I would love to introduce you. And actually, I would love to pick up from something that Anna said, which I really loved, which was how, to her, seamless localization is about human connection and making localization human-friendly. And so I would love to ask you to introduce yourselves and just like share your perspective on what seamless localization is. Anna, if you want to maybe start.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna, and I'm a senior localization manager at Amazon. I've worked in localization for many years, more than 15 years, I think, and both on the LSP and the client side. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk about something that is quite dear to me. In terms of seamless localization, I think that for me, at least, I've had so many experiences. I've worked with so many TMSs, like both built in-house and also existing ones, that it's a bit of it's a hard question, but I think the most important thing is to listen to everyone. If you know that you're gathering all the requirements from all the parties, just like Anna was mentioning, like we have to look at what the translator needs, what the reviewer needs, what the PM needs, everyone. So this solution, whatever it is, existing, a solution built in-house, whatever it is, it does have to answer the needs of all the parties involved in the loc process. That is, for me, that would be the answer to your question.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. And also what Julie was saying, that a lot of the time we don't have all of the people, like some like all of, I mean, usually one of the parties is kind of forgotten, and usually it's the translators. So yeah, Joanna, what is, who are you? And what is seamless localization to you?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Joanna Russell. I'm a program director at Venga Global. We're an international language service provider, and we partner with our clients and offer a range of services, from translation through creative services and also AI and data services. I've been in the industry, much like Anna, getting on for like 20 years now. Always been on the LSP side. So, with that said, like my perspective comes from three main angles, not just the localization, service provider project management side, but also from the translator side, much like you, Martina, and also from the client side, because that's also really important to us that everything works smoothly. For me, seamless localization, I think, needs to come also from like the, who owns the TMS, who's actually, why have they deployed it? So from essentially the client side, does the localized content flow smoothly through the system with, however many touch points or as few human touch points as possible, although the human touch points are absolutely critical. And then building in the ease of use. So taking from the the LSP project management, and also the translator. You know, is it easy to use, but also does it have the functionality that you need? And then taking also into consideration things like development teams. Does it actually fit seamlessly into the you know, the code repository or any of the content streams that you've got?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time, even if it is seamless, as you just said, I would say the majority of times it's not really easy to use for, you know, on the project management side and on the translator side and everyone. So that's definitely something that is quite important. Istvan, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Thank you, Martina. So my name is Istvan Lengyel, and I've been on many sites so far. So I started out as a translator myself. And then I was also, I started with MemoQ. That was my first venture, and I was managing a lot of both the project, and I was for a while also CEO there. And then I worked also at an LSP. I have even done a PhD in translation studies, and now I'm working wearing two hats. One is basically about virtualizing project management. So basically this is more on the LSP side, whether you are able to build the integrations necessary, whether you are able to build those logics necessary with my company BeLazy. And with Nimdzi, I am advising, consulting enterprises. And this is my only experience with enterprises, but given that I've been doing like 6 or 7 companies so far, this has given a lot of like interesting input because they were very different. And from my perspective, and I think I can join the previous speakers, that seamless is not really a localization or a TMS. It is a seamless content delivery process, which comprises of localization and other steps before mostly, and sometimes after. And I think what's most important is that you have clarified processes, and I'm a process freak. You need to have each step and with an objective at least, with input, output, and who do you rely on? Like you need to be able to map it because otherwise it's chaos and it will never be seamless. You need to have decisions taken about everything, and you can change your decisions. That should not be a problem. You need to be agile, but don't postpone the decisions. You need to include every step in the process. Also things that a lot of people in the TMS space don't think about, like source content approvals, which is a lot of things and updates, or job assignment, automation, or POs even. PO issuance, yes. For example, hardly anybody does automated, and it's taking a lot of time for the enterprises. And then try to cut all the unnecessary steps, unnecessary human touch points. For example, if a TMS does a quoting for you, why do you need a quote from the vendor? You can print it out yourself if you really need it in a paper form. And what you should try to aim for is, I think, SLAs and SLA compliance. And SLA is basically what you want to do, what are your responsibilities, what are the specifics of those. And it is not only towards the vendor, it's also within the company. And I think that if you've got all this, and if you've got all the agreements, and you're able to also follow the supply chain, not only just your supplier, so not only the MLV if you're at an enterprise, but also the MLV's SLV or the translator, or you have in-house translators, and take this all into account, then you can find the right technology. And I think it's always the process that leads to the right technology rather than the other way around.
Cool. Thanks. So yeah, basically, we really want to be able to integrate all the different processes and systems and participants into one seamless process, basically. I do agree with you, coming from both the translator side and the small scale LSP side. All this part of the issuing POs and everything is just non-existent, basically. And it's so time consuming to, something that should take you one click to do is just not built. It's just not there within the same. So it takes you like off the system, and it's just, you shouldn't do that, basically. Thank you for sharing. Do you think that seamless localization would be is available in all scenarios, or can you think of any situations where it doesn't, it's not possible? Istvan, since you were just talking about that.
I mean, there are typical problems where there are certain technological constraints, but even there is possible if you decisive steps. For example, one thing that is a typical problem is that when you only have a PDF, a scanned PDF, and there is no way to get anything because you're working in a, let's say, a clinical research company, and the doctors send you a PDF. I mean, the PDF conversion is never going to perfect, but yes, you can put a PDF review step that is done by people. So I think that the localization can still be perfect. I mean, seamless. Sorry.
Okay. You actually mentioned something about this, Joanna, I think, about this not being able to have like localization, seamless localization not being possible in different scenarios. We'd like to expand on that.
Well, I think it goes back to what seamless actually is. So like Istvan said, it could be a collection of different processes and technologies all coming together. And it's not necessarily that one TMS provides that complete seamless experience, but depending on your content types, if you've got, ever-changing content types, if you've got very regular content types, or you may be just translating product and you've got, the same files, the same code, and systems set up to parse those correctly and nothing ever changes, then seamless might seem, kind of, your everyday. But then if you're managing lots of different stakeholders within your organization and they're sending you ugly Excel files or, different XLIFs from different content management systems or e-learning systems, then every time you get something new, then you've got to stop and think. And, not every TMS will, just accept the file and parse it correctly. So you really have to think about those angles as well. So if you haven't got repeatable content, then that's where the seamless aspect kind of falls apart a little bit, because you have to stop and think. And then if you have to create, for example, new filters for if you want to hide certain things, whether it's Excel, PowerPoint, XLIFs, different tags or codes, then are you able to do that? Is someone within your organization able to do that? Or do you actually have to rely on the TMS providers? So in some cases, certain TMS providers kind of force the creation of the filter settings back on to their customers, their service. So you have less autonomy and you have less kind of capability to do things quickly and on the fly.
Yeah, that is just actually a big pain point that I've just come across, because I've recently, with my teams, I wanted to switch them to something that we could all use and just make the whole process more seamless. And one of the problem was just like, filters and things that should be quite easy and we should be able to get them done. Then we have to contact support. And then, like Anna mentioned earlier, support is not responsive. You have to wait 1 day for them to get back to you by email. It's just not really ideal. Touching on that, I would love to hear Anna's perspective on actually building a solution when you don't find a solution that fits your needs, because I know that you've done that in your career.
Yeah, actually, I've worked in 3 companies where we kind of went with a solution built in house. So the first one was a big company. The second one was a medium-sized company, and the third one is Amazon. But there was a lot that came into play, right? This wasn't a decision that we made in just a couple of weeks or a couple of months. There was a lot that came into play. We started with a massive briefing. So again, gather all the requirements. You mentioned, I think it was you who mentioned that sometimes the linguist is the one that is forgotten. We started with the linguist, actually. We always start with the linguist because we work backwards, especially in Amazon. That's our motto. We have to work backwards because the end customer is the most important thing, and it's at the core and at the center of everything that we do. So let me think about this for a bit. But of course, volumes were one of the biggest things that we had to take into account. We translate, I don't know how many billions of words per month. And obviously there are a lot of localization teams within Amazon. So we do need something that is scalable. So that was, I would say, that was the biggest trigger that we had. And also the experience of the translator. We did so much testing, so much. We started as I mentioned, we started building these requirement backwards. We analyzed everything from the needs, the particular needs of each one of the stakeholders, so each one of the parties. So in terms of what they needed in terms of grammar, term bases, TMs, everything that the translators need for their daily work, obviously. Then what do the PMs need? You guys were also mentioning the POs, the everything that is related to finance, that it's always a pain, a massive pain. We're always looking for ways to automate. So anything that we ended up building in the other two companies where I worked and in this one, everything also had to touch the finance point, because that's super important for us. Obviously, you want the least clicks possible, and you want to remove the middleman. So instead of going through 10 steps because the vendor's system is not linked to ours or something like that, we have to provide our LSPs with the best solution possible. Something else that we took into account from day one, the integrations that we've already also mentioned here, and Anna focused a lot on this one as well. Integration for us is top. Like, we always have to think about integration. We work with CMSs, so a content management system. We work with finance, other systems and things like that. We work with content. Istvan was mentioning that as well. What is seamless localization? It starts with writing the content. You author the content outside a localization tool. So you have to take that into account as well. So the TMS has a before and it has an after. So everything has to be tied into each other. That was something that was also taken into account from day one. Budget, let's talk about money, right? You have to think that we didn't make this decision, as I said, we didn't make this decision in just a couple of weeks or a couple of months. This was like a lot of effort and a lot of time was put into this. And we did analyze thoroughly everything that was available outside the box. How much money does it cost to customize it? How much money does it cost to integrate? And I can tell you that a few of the tools that we were thinking of adopting before we decided to build our own, it cost 45,000 euro alone just to integrate it with one of our systems. And we thought, okay, this is going to be a never-ending thing. And if we use more than 13 systems in just one team, it's going to be very, very hard to do this. So that was kind of those were the biggest things that we took into account, or the biggest criteria that we took into account to have our own solution. And again, just wanted to close this. One thing that you also have to consider in your own company is, can you go, if you want to build your solution in-house, can you also buy code? Like, can you buy code off Trados or SDL, sorry, Lionbridge? Like, is something like that available? Can you purchase the code and develop it in-house? Do you have a team of developers in-house that can customize the tool according to the needs of all the stakeholders? If that's also a possibility, that would be something that that I would also recommend companies to do.
Okay, cool, thank you. I think one of the biggest pain points that also Anna was mentioning in her presentation, and also I just went through all the different software in the industry, and yeah, the pricing is a little bit crazy because once you limit the seats at 12, what are you going to do with 12 people working on a project? As soon as you have 2 projects, then you end up paying, I don't know, thousands when it's just like really, really limiting. But also, it depends on the maturity of your company and how much budget you have, because if you want to build something in-house, you need to have the resources, and if you don't have somebody in-house who can develop that solution, then it ends up being astronomical prices as well. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And so yeah, it's
to that point, just to finish, sorry, I'm taking too much time, but just to that, I think it really depends on what your business model is, right? Because a company as big as Amazon, it might justify having something built in-house just because of the size. And as you were saying, the licensing is crazy. If I have, let's say I have, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 big MLVs, right? Imagine how many translators those MLVs have. If I'm going to purchase, right? If I'm going to purchase licenses for all those people, I don't know, 15,000 licenses, it becomes astronomical. Like, exactly, right? That's the thing.
I wonder, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, like, I wonder, because this is not sustainable. So I was just saying, I wonder if something is going to change at some point. It is just the way it is now, but yeah.
I don't know. I think I read a comment there. Someone was mentioning the availability of connectors. That there are some connectors already available in the market, like office tools and things like that. Obviously, that those are all integrated, and that's amazing. But what about, for instance, as Joanna was mentioning, what about what all the files that and crazy things that we do DTP on? Like, DTP is hard enough as it is. Imagine going through localization, moving those or converting those files into a localizable format, then converting them back into the other format, then rearranging everything or converting them into PDF so that you can do in context review. And then you go back to the LQA and then you fix things and then you have to reconvert it back. Like, it's a lot of work. Like, the more, if you don't have, of course, you're not going to have connectors for everything that is available in the market. And I'm speaking specifically about the files that need DTP or the materials that you need DTP for. So these are massive things. And for really big companies that translate billions and billions of words per month, it just becomes unsustainable. So all the licensing, all the conversions and reconversions, it's unsustainable. And again, we would break the seamless localization process.
Yeah, which is the whole point.
Exactly.
Of paying that much money in the first place. Joanna, would you like to, I would love to know what you think about that, because I know, you work with, you're big on the client side and help them implement and everything. So I would love to know what your perspective on all of this is.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because obviously, like a powerhouse like Amazon, you must have so many different systems that perhaps an out-of-the-box TMS just can't cover all the boxes that you need. So it's all about kind of like what your biggest challenges are. So as an organization, what challenges are you looking to solve with the TMS? It could be something as simple as, some automated handoffs. You might have some simple content, and depending on the size of your organization or the different content streams you've got, then it really, how complex a TMS you need, comes into play. So if you're potentially, you might start off not being, particularly very mature in the new localization journey. And then, you might start with one TMS that fits the bill really quite nicely. But then as you grow and evolve and, your company starts to adopt more technologies, it might then not become, fit for purpose anymore. But working, on the LSP side, we've worked in, several different scenarios where we've, had to, set up and configure an out of the box TMS just for our own personal use and have that as our main TMS within the organization. And then a custom built TMS that we then built from scratch, and was heavily involved in kind of configuring and obviously the feature requests. So as if there's any project managers on the event today, then it's the pain points that you go through. Sometimes when a TMS is built, it's not always built with either project managers or translators in mind. It might just be built for developers to integrate their content and different things like that. So especially when you have that inbuilt, in-house and custom built TMSs, do you have actually users that are going to kind of contribute towards the kind of the improvement of it, and they're kind of like enhancing the features and making sure that as the requirements grow, the features are built and added in. So you might not always be able to get that from out of the box TMS. So that's maybe, that's something else to consider, is how customizable is the TMS. When you're evaluating TMS providers, how are they quite adaptable? Are they will they put certain features on the roadmap? And then I've also worked in situations where we've worked together with a TMS provider to do the setup and configuration for a new client we were onboarding, and that was a really interesting journey, because it wasn't just, okay, we've got this TMS set up. It was we're selecting a translation vendor and we're selecting a TMS partner at the same time, and then the two of us had to work together, actually became very good, had to work very closely to take into account the client's needs, but then also you want, as a project manager and representing the translators as well, you want to make sure that you get your requirements into the whole configuration and setup. And then again, you have a completely different side, which as translators you probably are more familiar with, where a client has their TMS system, but you only see a small portion of it. You only see the work that's assigned to you, so you don't really get to see the settings or the workflows. So sometimes it can be difficult to understand how the ecosystem of the TMS, and especially for translators, if you can just see your tasks, maybe that's what you want, but as an LSP, sometimes you want to kind of dig a bit deeper. But of course, with security and permissions, you don't want to go changing things, but sometimes it can be helpful to be able to see more into what I'd call like the bowels of the system, so that you can really understand the client's ecosystem and how everything works from a process point of view. Yeah,
that is true. Actually, since switching to a new TMS, which I'm still learning how to use, to like and not to hate, I've realized that, I realized that limitations that you just described. And so I always make sure to kind of give like a really good onboarding to every translator that we work with, because I think that makes big difference. Istvan, you consult on clients on which TMS is best for their business, right? Is that correct? Okay, yes. So what would you say are the most important criteria for selecting a TMS? I know that's a broad question because each client will vary, but you mentioned enterprise, I guess. So I guess that's where you have.
Yeah, I mean, Anna was already saying DTP. DTP is super important. How important DTP is, that defines very much what is the range of systems you can go with. It's actually weird because there are so many TMSs, but like we live in the world of AI, and I mean, DTP would lend itself so much to automation. It is something that with AI you could really apply, just like you apply machine translation, but I have never seen a company doing this. And it's something that if there is anybody who wants to start a business on this, then take my advice. It would be a good fun, because it's the most invisible thing. It's like nobody talks about it at conferences and speeches, but it's very much there. The other thing that is very important to keep in mind is definitely your production model. So if you have an in-house team, or if you've got in-house people, then the whole thing is completely different than if you outsource everything. Then other than that, obviously the type of software you are working with. So whether there is something out of the box integration, but what I'm seeing is that with most companies, there is no tool that would give out of the box integration for everything. And there are certain things that are easy to integrate, and there are other things that are harder to integrate. And there needs to be, for example, data. If somebody is using data, that already is limiting the amount of systems that they should be using. And not because it's an XML format and translating an XML format is possible in every tool, but because if you want to see preview, if you want to see data map, complicated enough within the TMS. So you don't want to go into the other thing. What else? I mean, customer portal. How much you need the customer portal. That's a super important thing, and how much you want to build a customer portal. And while, I mean, there is a general tendency in this world to have the TMS do everything, I think that's because we are from a place where there are very few developers, whereas everywhere else it's more. And when I look at, for example, very successful software like, I don't know, Slack or Calendly, I mean, compare the scope of what a TMS does with the scope of these much larger players in the market making much more money. It's so much more limited, and it's all about the connectivity and some people doing the development work. And I think that for most enterprises, if you don't have somebody who is able to help you both build the process and build outside, that's also a problem. And for example, when it comes to to building like prototype processes. And what I'm usually doing is building it in something very simple like Jira or Trello or something, like if what to do on these parts, just with the inputs, outputs, with the things. Or another tool that I love to use, for example, is Integromat, which is, I'm super into automation, and automation is best done with like good REST APIs. And it's a super simple, super cheap tool, $9 a month. Even if
it's like Zapier, it's like the same Zapier.
It's like
right?
Zapier,
but
yeah.
it's more
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
more
Exactly.
more like
the reason why I like Integromat a little more than Zapier is that it is building workflows. So it's visual. It is like you create it and then you show it to someone and they understand it. With Zapier, it's kind of easier to build it. There is less problems, but it's not as impressive. I mean, Integromat is the world server kind of workflow builder for me. And I don't like word server very much, but I do like Integromat.
Yeah, I think it's for the more technically skilled people, whereas Zapier is a bit more on the easier side. Okay, thank you so much. Actually, now I would love to bring it back to the different perspectives, and I would actually like to chime in because we've been talking a lot of the time now about what makes a translation management system friendly and how we should be, human friendly in the end from all different perspectives. And before coming on this webinar today, I actually surveyed my colleagues, translators, and I got something like 700 replies because I really wanted to see, is it just me having these frustrations with the TMSs on the translator side? And basically what Anna was saying in her presentation, a lot of the things that she said are definitely true. Like, for example, which is especially challenging for online systems. That is very challenging when you might not be able to do a translation online all of the time for whatever reason. So especially if you are in a country where maybe internet connection is not always available, then one thing that would be great is to also have like some sort of offline editor that would sync back as soon as you're back online. That would be something that, I don't know if, for example, Anna, with your home build solution, you offer something like that to your teams.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, no, because
Sorry.
I was just saying, no worries. I was just saying if like for translators, when it would be really useful to have something that you're not forced to work online if for whatever reason you cannot connect. And so some tools also have an offline editor. So some tools are desktop based and they have an online editor, and most of the time it's pretty bad. It's awful. And then you have the online tools, and very rarely they also offer an offline editor. They syncs back automatically as soon as you're connected online. So I saw you nodding, so I was wondering if you have experience with that.
We do. It doesn't happen very often. So one of the considerations and one of the things that we did try to think about in any of these three companies was we have to make sure that if there is a problem or with the internet connection, we have to make sure that everything is saved. So actually our system saves everything every couple of seconds, every 2 or 3 seconds. So we don't really have that problem. And because TMs and TBs are updated in real time, we also don't have that problem. So if something is saved in the TM, or if the person forgot to confirm the segment and save it in the TM, the next time they're online, it will show up because everything is saved. Like in the cloud. Yeah. So we don't really have those problems. Initially, we were going to make an offline API available, but what would be the point? We thought, like, if we keep doing that, nothing will change because the vendors might want to keep working offline. So that was actually something I onboarded everyone to use this new platform. And that was something that I made sure to communicate. We want everyone to work online because we lose a lot of things, and we have problems with people downloading TVs or downloading TMs and using really old materials. Then they get errors in LQAs and then they don't know where they came from. That's why. So we really wanted to make sure that everyone was using our platform online all the time. And again, scalability and making sure the internet connection is not a problem, especially if people lose the projects or something like that. They don't have to worry about that because everything is saved every couple of seconds. Now, one thing that you mentioned there, if they, for some reason, a cable breaks or whatever, or if something like that happens, we usually ask the vendor to let us know, to inform us, the PM, and we try to find another solution, or they try to find another translator who is available. I don't think we've ever encountered like such a bad situation that we couldn't really work around the fact that they couldn't work online. I don't think, since we implemented the system, I don't think that was over 3 years ago, I think. I don't think we've had that problem. Thank God.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
And then
a question
Sure.
From Anna. So I'm just wondering, like, do you have any like hot link? Because with making people work online, I think what you're doing is like you're taking on much more responsibility for the translator's work. And I think it's always a matter of configuration. And in my career, I've seen a lot of cases where the customer, the enterprise, wanted to take ownership, but they didn't really know how to do it well. And they were, applying the wrong language resources and things like that. Like, is there a way for you, for everyone in the supply chain, like the last translator, to contact you to let you know if something is so that you would need to improve on it, rather than having to suffer through?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, when we started discussing this, we did a lot of testing, and we actually had asked all the translators. Of course, we don't know all the translators, but we do know quite a lot of them, and the reviewers as well. So we asked everyone to test. And every time I usually get, not every day, but we do get a lot of feedback from our translators that come through the MLVs, of course. Obviously, we couldn't have 15,000 translators reach out to us, but we do have the PMs. They collect all the feedback. Like, for example, I get a lot of suggestions to improve, say, the way they insert the terms in the segments, or the way the TM order works. And I've opened many features for our dev team to work on. So it is something, it's a very, very open channel that we have. We want to receive that feedback from our translators, from our PMs, from everyone. We definitely, we don't close that door, quite the opposite.
And that's one luxury you've got of having built it in-house, from the ground up.
Yes, totally.
So one of the complaints we hear a lot from translators, and Martina, you probably empathize with this, is that when you're working online, and obviously we encourage all our translators to work online in any online TMS that we're using, the features aren't quite as rich as the traditional workbench translation tools out there. And that's one of the main complaints we get, is the QA is not good enough. Is the spell check there? So you've got the luxury there to kind of like develop some of those tools that and features, especially kind of on the check side, because obviously translators really want to make sure that they're delivering really good quality. But sometimes we're all human at the end of the day, and some things are quite easy to slip through. And if the QA features aren't rich enough, then they can pass through undetected almost.
Yeah, that is true. I had a very recent episode which made me switch to a different provider, like a different TMS. I was trialing one, and then the QA was just awful. I had to, I couldn't even give any responsibility to the translators, and I had to do everything on my end, and it was just awful. It just took too long, and it was just really not the way that it should be. And it's something that is supposed to be easy enough, but in most of TMSs, the QA features are not strong enough. And then the next, I think, painful point for a lot of TMSs is the user interface. A lot of the time is quite clumsy. And I don't know who said earlier that usually they're developed for developers and older stakeholders. And even for project management, like the interface, a lot of the time is just why do I have to click 10 times to do something that should take me 1 click, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, we see that a lot. And it's if you're in an organization where you have one localization department and those localization project managers and all the concept, localization requirements are filtered through that one department, and all your teams upskilled and are familiar with the TMS, then perhaps that's not so much of an issue. But if you're decentralized and then you're expecting, hundreds of stakeholders within the organization to submit translation requests that then flow seamlessly through the system, then that's something else that needs to be taken into consideration. So some TMSs seem to require a lot more knowledge of how what workflow to use, what settings to use, and that's not always intuitive for somebody on the client side that wants to submit content for translation. And very often that's where sometimes that derails the whole seamlessness, because then on the vendor side, then you notice that things are wrong, and then you have to go backwards and forwards and then help them set up the project correctly. So yeah, that is a big pain point.
Yeah, in my experience, seamless is hard to reach, actually. So yeah.
Is it just the dream?
It is a dream for now, but we're having conversations about it which means that things are moving, and hopefully we will have more powerful features and just better user interfaces and thinking about the people. I think Anna said earlier, which I really liked, which I think is true, that at the end of the day, it always goes back to the people who are doing the core of the business. So the technology needs to be really advanced instead of the art, but at the end of the day, you have people who also need to be able to work within the technology and to do all the work. So hopefully going forward, we'll see more of that happening. Do you have anything else that you want to share about this seamlessness of localization? Maybe, Jonna.
I think really one of the things that might be difficult to achieve, or when perhaps when you're evaluating a TMS, if you've relied on an LSP just they're using what they want, and yes, the translation memory and etc. is all yours, but you actually want to move and have the TMS, host the TMS yourself, and really own the whole more of the process. Then if you have different, you want different connections, it's obviously connectors and API integrations, like somebody said before, an out of the box connector doesn't actually always, very, very unlikely to work straight off the bat. So how do you actually, if it's going to cost thousands of pounds or dollars and time to actually build those connectors, how do you actually trust that it will work as expected? So you want a connector with a certain CMS, you also want in context previews and translators and reviewers to work in context. Does it actually work as expected? So what your TMS, the TMS providers actually selling might not always, when it comes in the reality, might not always do what it says on the tin. So it might actually be a different experience. So how do you actually take that leap of faith? And I guess really it's kind of, if you're on the client side and you're looking for a TMS, then really I'd say you've really got to do your homework. You've got to spend the time, like Anna said, spend your time doing the discoveries and identify your biggest challenges and some of the items where you're willing to compromise on. So if you're looking for an out of the box TMS, it's very unlikely that you'll find one TMS that ticks all boxes, but where you're willing to compromise, and then bring in your translators, your LSPs, and leverage their expertise, because they're likely to have experienced lots of different systems and can give you those pros and cons, and really go into the detail with the TMS provider. I think that's really key. Really find out if you think you're going to need, feature customizations, how willing are they to look at putting those on your roadmap, or is it more, this is what we have and you have to just work within those confines. So it's really all about the homework and the testing, and then not just taking things at face value, is really digging into the actual detail and trying to get as much information as you can. So if you can't actually see something live, because obviously you want to test as much as you can, like Anna said, test. But if you can't test an integration out, then can you see as far as possible down the line to actually visualize what that's going to look like and what that's going to look like for, also translators down the line. So if you've been sold in context translation, does it actually provide that, or are there multiple steps to go through to just achieve that?
I think something that you just said about basically growth and like you as an organization will evolve, hopefully, over time, and you will have different needs. And so I think we had a conversation about this at some point, where it was recommended that organizations or teams in general review their TMS and their processes every 3 to 4 years, and just see if they have. Was you, Istvan? So where's your hand? 5 years. 5 years. Yeah. Because obviously, as you grow, you will have different needs, and things will get more complicated, and you will need more integrations, and so that becomes complicated.
And I think as a translator, don't be afraid to give the feedback. So we've seen lots of cases where, we've collated all the feedback of all the pain points, and then we've, where the client actually, is paying for the TMS, then through them, we're able to actually, build in more, have some features developed, so it's like leveraging, if you're on the translator or the LSP side, try and work through, if you don't think you'll have an impact on the TMS provider yourselves, the person who's paying for the service may do. Mm-hmm. So it's important to try and get your voice heard, and suggest feature enhancements, because I've seen some tools that 2.5 years ago were pretty rudimentary on the translation point, on the translation interface, but features have developed over that time, and now there's much more feature rich, and that's through enhancing feature enhancement requests, and then working through with our clients to then with their customer support to try and build a case for these features to be developed.
That is actually quite interesting, because in my career, working when I was growing up as a professional in translation, and I was working mainly with agencies myself, I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I would be comfortable or could have brought me my perspective and raised my questions on how can we improve the tool. And I don't think any LSP that I've ever been in touch with has ever brought that forward and said, hey, by the way, if you're doing the work 8 hours a day or whatever in this tool, and if there's something that you feel that needs to be added, please let me know, let us know. I've never ever heard that from any LSP that I've ever worked with. So I think that could be a good step, forward, I guess.
Well, that's really important for us, because obviously it's the translators that do it, and if we want to meet fast turnaround, strict turnaround times, if our translators are suffering and we're forcing them to work online in the tool because it's just either not possible, or it's just not feasible, or it's really inconvenient to export files in and out of the system, like you said, for using old TMSs and things, then it's really important for us that they, to the best of our abilities, we can support them to do their job properly and well, rather than bashing translators over the head for getting things wrong. It's like, well, how can you what would actually make it better? So we try as far as possible to get the make sure the translators are able to do their jobs.
Yeah, that is an amazing point, and I hope that there is any LSP, anyone from an LSP watching this. Let's do that. Let's have that as a practice, as best practice in our industry, because I think that's where the improvement can happen. It's the translators doing the work, so the improvements can come from the bottom rather than from the actual people who are using the tool. So I think it would be. Somebody just wrote that, Harry just wrote that translations don't mention the pain points unless asked, and I can see that. So I think for LSPs it would be great to just kind of have start a conversation and make their teams feel comfortable bringing that up. For me, one of the main points in choosing the new TMS that I switched my teams with to was to actually ask them, how do you feel about working with this, and kind of also evaluate. I don't want to, force people to work with something they're going to hate, and they're going to hate working with me in the end and be frustrated throughout the process. I just want everyone to, every stakeholder in the process to be satisfied with with what they're doing. And I think also depending on what kind of work you do, like Anna was mentioning that she works mainly with the product, and then we'll have people working mainly, like companies are LSPs working, I don't know, completely different type of content. And so, yeah, the requirements for that TMS also might vary.
I think if you don't mind, I would just like to add one thought to this. So translators are basically at the end of the supply chain. And I'm not saying this in a negative way or anything. I'm trying just to say that like they are basically getting an environment that is the consequence of many decisions taken on every higher level up. And as a matter of fact, I don't really see a problem these days with the translator interface. I think what matters is to have it configured correctly. They have matured a lot. And on the other hand, it's also very clear that, let's say, if you're using your own tool for a large project that you're working on for 3-4 hours, that's a very different story, because starting up like one desktop tool might take 20-25 seconds, and then creating a project and so on and so forth. And then you just log into a browser-based tool, 5 seconds, you translate, it's much faster, even if the capabilities are worse. I think it always matters whether you're doing microtransactions or whether you're doing big transactions, and whether you are ready to learn more than one tool as a translator.
Yeah, that is true. Then there is the case that each client and the client or the LSP have 15 different tools, and then it becomes slightly complicated to navigate all of them. I mean, they're all similar, thankfully, but some are better than others. Yeah.
Some you know where to configure, some you don't.
Sorry? Some?
And some of them you know where to configure, and some you don't.
Yeah, some are more complicated than others. Yeah, and I think also Anna mentioned that, but I think someone else earlier about the statistics and the reports, that is really useful for translators, definitely, but also like it is useful for both the translators and the project managers, not to have to get out of the system to create the PO. That is kind of a really important feature that should be integrated, I think, in most CMSs. Yeah, so do you have any other, like, I don't know, words of advice, anything else to add?
No, maybe just not a repetition, but just to stress the importance of what we said here: test. And
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, exactly. Because what we did in these 3 companies where we built our own solution in-house, what we did was we had phases for the project. First, we gathered the requirements, then we started building the tool, then we started the testing phase, right? And it wasn't just once or twice or 3 times, it was a good few times. But again, everyone in the supply chain, the PMs need to test it, the client needs to test it, the linguists need to test it, everyone needs to test it. And sorry, can you hear me? I think my internet connection is a bit slow.
You're back
yes,
again.
yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Your last segment was saved.
Sorry, I was just saying that you really need to have everyone in the supply chain do a good few rounds of testing, because otherwise, if something falls through the cracks in the middle, obviously it's not going to work, and it becomes pointless if we're not building something that is going to satisfy at least the most basic needs of all the stakeholders in the supply chain. It's a bit pointless. So you do have to, whatever the solution it is that you're trying to implement, be it an out-of-the-box solution or something built in-house, just make sure that you do a lot of testing and that you take the feedback on board. A lot of the times it's about educating. Trust me, I've talked to many people, and I know that, I don't want to say anything because they're the client and they're going to fire us, or it's exactly the opposite. You have to educate people. If you're building something, or if you're asking your MLV or your linguists to work with your given tool, you have to accept feedback. You have to be open to accept feedback and to implement whatever solution you have available.
Yeah, that's a great summary, I think. We're coming to the end of the panel conversation, and something that I really took away from it is usability, of course, and feedback, but also feedback and usability of internally controlled settings. So that's something that I'm certainly taking away for myself as well. You know, I want to control everything because I want to make sure everything happens exactly as I want to, but then I also need to take the responsibility and make sure that everything is set up properly. And that's something that working for a company that works on feedback all the time is something that I probably can do better on, and really get that feedback all the time from linguists as well on, are our settings okay? Is there anything that's not working? So that's a great takeaway from me. And let's continue this conversation in the breakout rooms as well, and everybody can share their perspectives. Thanks so much, Anna, for the great presentation, and thanks to Martina for moderating, and Joanna, the other Anna, and Istvan for the great insights in the panel discussion. Yeah, please everybody sign up to become a member in Women in Localization. We will share this video also on the Women in Localization website really soon. We will now start the breakout rooms. So please just hang on and join one of the rooms to meet new localization contacts, continue this conversation, or just to catch up with old friends. So thanks everybody for joining, and I meet you in some of the breakout rooms. Thank you.
That was fast.
I know, it always goes quick, doesn't it?
It was fantastic, fantastic.
So yeah, usually have some people drop off during the breakouts. That's perfectly normal. It's yeah, I have to say thanks again for the great presentation, for the interesting panel conversation, and I also had a really engaging chat during the breakout. I hope it was the same for you. Yeah, so thanks for joining, and the presentation, the recording will be online on the Women in Localization website. Wish you a really pleasant evening or afternoon or wherever you are located, and hope to see you at the next event. Thanks.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
You, everyone. Have a great day.